All right, so today we are going to make our chocolate cupcakes. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to gather everything that we need and sort of put it all together. So the first thing we are going to need is 2 cups of flour. So I'm going to start gathering my flour and my dry ingredients first. So I have a cup measure here. My cup measure does not have a handle anymore, but I know it's 2 cups. So I'm going to grab my flour, and I might need to grab more. And I'm going to grab a spoon to shovel it out. So we don't want our flour to be packed. So we are going to shovel it out like we were shoveling like dirt or something else with a real shovel. We're going to use that same technique with our flour. So here I'm going to just scoop it out here with my spoon. And if I had like a flour pot kind of thing, I would try to get the flour back in the bag. It's not really doing a great job. So I'm going to grab a knife so I can level my flour. So what we do is we will tap our flour over top of the bag or the container that it's in, and we'll scoot it off. So it's filled every area, but we don't want to just scoop it out, because if we scoop out our flour, it is going to pack and we're not going to get quite the amount of flour we are looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and start by adding my flour to this bowl. So here's my first cup of flour. I need a second cup as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. I can now, I'm just running, I only have about 1.5 feet of space here. So it's really hard because of where the wires are for the cameras. So again, I'm going to scoop out another cup of flour, same way with my little shovel method, to make sure we're getting the flour and keeping it light. We don't want it to pack down, because then we won't get as much flour as we need. All right, again, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to try to level my flour. So now I have my 2 cups of flour in this bowl. So I'm going to, I don't need any more flour, so I'm going to shut the flour bag and put it away just because I have very limited space. I'm going to go ahead and get my next ingredient. So I've got my flour. I want to go ahead and add my baking soda, and I want to add 1¼ teaspoons. So both of these, 1¼ teaspoons of baking soda. So I'm going to start by sticking my spoon in, and then I'm going to use the top of the box to pull it off so that it's nice and flat, and I'm going to add that to my flour. And now I'm going to do the same thing with my quarter. So there's my 1¼ teaspoons of baking soda. I'm going to go ahead and add some salt. I'm going to just put it over this just in case I spill any. I need a teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to use that same teaspoon measure, and I'm going to measure out a teaspoon of salt. Oof, I measured too much, so I'm going to level it here and add the salt to my mixture. The next thing I need to put in is my 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. So we have 2 different things. We have baking powder and we have baking soda. So we've already added the baking soda. We are now going to add the baking powder. And I have 1/4 teaspoon of that I will need. So I've got my 1/4 teaspoon again. This one is really easy for leveling. I'm going to scoop it, and then I'm going to pull it against this metal thing right here. And I'm going to add it to my mixture. So I've got all of my dry pieces that I'm going to need already started out. I'm going to use this spoon and just stir it together because we want it mixed together evenly. And then I'm going to set it off to the side. I'm going to go ahead at this point and turn my oven on and heat it till 350 degrees. So that's starting to heat up as I'm making my batter. The next thing I want to do is I want to turn on my water and get some hot water because we're going to be using that to mix the chocolate. So I'm going to go over to my sink, turn the hot water on, and then I'm going to get 1 cup, so right there at the 1 cup mark, 1 cup of hot water. While the water is heating up, I'm going to find a smaller bowl because I'm going to need a second bowl. So here's my smaller bowl. The water is taking a really long time to heat up today, so while I'm waiting for the water to heat, I'm going to go ahead and scoop out my cocoa. So I need 2/3 of a cup of unsweetened cocoa. So I don't have a 2/3 cup measure, but I do have a 1/3 cup measure. So I'm going to do 2 of these 1/3 cup measures. So here's my cocoa. Same thing as with the measuring spoons. I'm going to scoop it out, level it, and dump it in. And I'm going to do that twice so I can get my 2/3 of a cup. A lot of cocoa. So there's my 2/3 of a cup of cocoa. Let me check on my hot water and see if it's ready to go now. When I come back, I'm also going to bring a fork. So my 1 cup of hot water is ready. I'm going to put it in the cocoa. And I'm going to stir it up because I'm trying to dissolve that cocoa into that water. So now I've got this. It probably would be too strong to drink hot chocolate, but that's essentially what this is. It is a type of kind of like hot chocolate, but probably way thicker and not very sweet because it's semi-sweet chocolate or unsweetened chocolate. Sorry, it's unsweetened chocolate. And I'm going to set this over to the side as well. The next thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to get my mixer. I've got a lot, you can see these wires are in the way. These wires are how I have my cameras connected. So I can't move those. So I'm going to have to move my mixer. Before I pull the mixer out, I'm going to wipe down my countertop and pull this flour off. And I'm going to carefully, you don't have to be as careful as I do, but I'm going to get my mixer on the other side of these wires. Here we go. All right, and I've already got it plugged in. So I'm using my whisk that has, or my paddle that has this silicone on it. It's going to scrape the edges as I mix, but I have that ready to go. And so the next couple things I want to get is first I want to get my shortening here. I need 3/4 of a cup of shortening. So I can use my same knife that I was using to level. So this stuff is really unhealthy. So this is definitely not something you would eat a lot of. And I'm going to look here. It says 3/4 of a cup. So I'm going to cut it here. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop it in into my mixer. Now, before I am ready to start mixing, I need to pull out a couple other things. So this is ready to go. I'm going to just shut it so it's out of my way. Before I'm ready to start mixing, I need to get a few other things ready to go because we are going to do several things at once. So I've got this. I'm going to need to get some sugar. And when we're doing our sugar, we're actually going to we needed a total of 1.5 cups. This piece of this Crisco or this shortening, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of sugar every about 30 seconds or so. The big thing is I need to remember I need 1.5 cups. So that is going to be 6 of these little guys. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on to medium. I'm going to let it go first so it gets sort of softened here. And it's sort of creaming, as you can see. Get the light. Better. No, it didn't make it much better. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my first of 6. So here's number 1. And I just keep my hands out of the way. And I'm going to let it go again. I'm going to go ahead and add my number 2. Here's my second. Again, I'm going to keep my hand out of the way of the paddle, but I'm going to add it while it's still mixing in. I'm going to go ahead and get my third one ready. Here's my fourth. So I now have a cup of sugar. Oh, sorry, my third one. So now I have a cup of sugar, or a third of a cup of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of sugar in. Here is my number 4. Add my 4. And now I'm going to let it beat for just a second. And then I'm going to pause it for a moment. Open up the lid. And I'm going to make sure I'm pushing down on all the sides. I want to make sure all the sides are getting equal mixing. So I'm using this little spatula. You could use a small spatula or a spoon will work too. And you're going to push down the sides to make sure that everything gets mixed together nicely. Here's my fourth one. I've got 2 more to add in a moment. Here's my fifth. And I got my last one. I'm going to move my sugar out of the way so I don't get it. Again, I'm going to take a second and pause, and I'm going to push down the sides so I can make sure everything is getting mixed together. So it's got this like really, it looks almost like snow, this white fluffy mixture here. So I'm also going to scoop it at the bottom because sometimes the sugar gets stuck on the bottom. And I'm going to add my last cup of sugar. So now that all my sugar is added, I need to set a timer for 2 minutes, and I'm going to let it mix for 2 minutes. So again, we always stay near just in case something goes wrong. But I'm just going to let this stuff mix up for 2 minutes so we can sort of see what it looks like right now. I now have 1 more minute for it to beat, so I can see that the texture has changed some. I'm like whipping it through. It looks a lot more fluffy than it did a few minutes ago. It looked kind of granule before. Now it's pretty fluffy. And remember, we haven't added any water or anything yet. This is just that shortening and the sugar. So I have about 30 seconds remaining for me to keep whipping this up. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get ready to add my eggs. So I have my 1 egg all ready to go. So I am going to be ready to add that, and then I will take care of the second egg while it's beating in. Got about 10 seconds till my timer goes off. Okay, so I can go ahead. I'm going to slow my timer for my stirrer down, and I'm going to go ahead and just slide my egg in. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on. It's going to go a little bit slower because it's wet now, and I'm going to go ahead and mix up that egg. While the egg is mixing, I am going to, over here on my counter, crack and prepare this other egg. So my mixture, I don't know, it's hard to tell on the camera, but my mixture changed color. So it's now a little bit yellow. That's from the yolk of the egg, and it's looking more and more fluffy. Again, I'll try to see. The lamp makes a difference. Yeah, I think you can see a little bit more now if I turn off that light. On. This light off. There we go. I think you can see it best now. But it's getting pretty fluffy. I'm going to go ahead and slow it down again, and I'm going to add my next egg. And again, I'm going to mix it up. So it's looking good and fluffy. I'm going to go ahead and slow it down. Now I need to add my vanilla. So I need 1 teaspoon of vanilla, so I can use my same teaspoon measure. Make sure it says teaspoon. Oops. And I'm going to pour. I'm going to use the same thing I was using for the eggs. I'm going to pour over this just in case I spill. Oh, you can't see. Okay. And so I've got my vanilla, and I'm going to pour. Oh, well, I didn't have very much vanilla left in that bottle. Let me grab the next bottle. I bought a new bottle. So I've got to pull the stuff off of it. Alrighty, there we go. So I've now got my vanilla. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pour it into my 1 teaspoon measure. Carefully bring it up here, and I'm going to add it to my mixture. Now we are making chocolate cupcakes, but we do need to use a little vanilla. So again, I'm going to turn my mixture on and mix it a little bit more. All right, so now this is the part where it can get messy and tricky. We are going to carefully and slowly add in our cocoa and our powder. So remember that powder that we started out with at the beginning? We are going to add that to our mixer. We're not going to add it all at once. We're going to do about 1/3 at a time. So we're going to try to divide this in our minds into 3. And we're going to do it 1/3 at a time. So what I am going to do is I'm going to hold it back here, and I'm going to go ahead and slowly turn on my mixer. So I need my mixer to be slow or the powder will go everywhere. And I'm going to just scoop in about what I think is 1/3. It doesn't have to be a perfect 1/3, but we're going to eyeball about 1/3. So there's about a third of my flour mixture. I can turn my speed up just a little bit more now as it mixes. Now I want to make sure I don't see too much powdery stuff in there. It's looking good. Now I want, before I add more powder, I am going to add about half of my chocolate mixture. So again, I'm going to just stir my hand here, pour it slowly. We want to make sure our mixer is going real slow because otherwise it's going to splatter on your house and you don't want that to happen. And I've now moved it up. It smells really good and chocolatey. I'm going to let it mix in. And then I'm going to add another third of my flour. So I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to add about another third of that flour mixture. Turn it up again to get it all mixed in nicely. Before I add my next amount of chocolate, I'm going to check to make sure everything is coming off the sides. We don't want to have one side that just has a lot of Crisco or one side that has a lot of sugar or anything like that. So I'm just going to go around the edges in the bottom because I see down here, you see some parts that are just white. That's not what we want. That means it didn't get mixed as nicely as we'd like. So I've got that. I'm just going to move this over to the side for now. I'm going to lock it and turn it back on. I'm going to let it mix for another 30 seconds or so before I add my second half of my chocolate. Okay, I'm going to slow it down a little bit, and I'm going to carefully add my chocolate. Make sure all my chocolate gets in, because this is it for the chocolate. Speed it up a little bit more. Make sure it's all mixed in there nicely. It smells so good. If you're cooking along at home, I'm sure you can attest. It smells delicious. If you're not cooking along, I promise you it's great. And I'm not even a big chocolate fan. So I'm going to go ahead and slow it down. This is our last bit of flour I'm going to add in. And I want to make sure it gets mixed in really, really well. So I'm going to let it mix here. It's almost done. It looks pretty blended to me. Again, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to check the sides again, make sure everything looks good. We don't want to overbeat it either, but we do want to make sure that everything is mixed together, and it looks nicely mixed. See a little bit of white there. So it looks pretty good. So I now have my batter. So the next thing I need to do is I need to get out my muffin tin or my cupcake tin and prepare my cupcake tin. All right, so I have my muffin tin here. And I'm going to go ahead and get the pan liners. So I've got these cupcake liners, and I'm going to just throw one in each cup. Now, this batter does make enough for 24. I only have one muffin tin, so I can only make 12 at a time. If you're cooking along at home and you have 2 muffin tins, make 24. I'm going to have to make my other dozen on my own time later on. So I, again, am working with really limited space, so it's going to be a little bit hard for me to do the scooping here, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try to use, I think I'm going to try to use a ladle and see if that works for me. So I'm going to use a ladle, and we want to fill these cupcake cups about 2/3 full. So I'm going to do my best and see how this works. Maybe I'll use my ladle and this little rubber spatula because this is really, really thick. Well, that's a little bit more than 2/3. Let's try this next one. This is really, really thick, delicious batter. So this is going to get a little bit messy, and it's, unfortunately for me, because I just don't have very much space to work with, it's going to get even messier than probably it will be for you. So I am trying my best to fill 2/3 of a cupcake cup at a time. I did ask for a cupcake batter dispenser for Christmas, so maybe I won't be having this problem next time. So this one needs a little bit more. Just try this. Oh, this might be a better option. I don't know. So now I'm going to just check to make sure all of my cupcake cups look about the same size. And remember, we want them all to have about the same amount because otherwise they're going to bake at different speeds. And we want them all, we don't want any of them to burn because if we have just a little bit, it's going to bake for too long. If we have one with a lot more than everything else, it's not going to bake long enough. So I'm making sure that all of mine look like they're about 2/3 even. I don't know about this guy. I don't know what happened here. This one looks weird. I don't know. But they all look about 2/3. I'm going to try to flatten their tops just a little bit. So that looks pretty good. Now, I want to grab a paper towel. First, I want to wipe off my hands, and I also want to grab a paper towel because it's really important to make sure that you don't have any batter on the edge of the pan. So if I look here, I see I have a little bit of batter here. We want to wipe that off because it's going to get burned on. It will get smoky. It will smell bad. It's not what we're looking for. So I'm going to wipe anything that I see off the edge because we don't want those to burn on. Otherwise, it looks pretty good. If I do this, it sort of levels that out a little bit. I'm going to grab a spoon and make sure everything looks even. So like this one, I have no idea what's wrong with his cupcake cup. He looks strange. Like, I don't know. I can't get it to stick back out, but I'm sure it's fine. The other ones look pretty good. Add just a little bit more to you. But they all look about 2/3 full. I kind of want them to be evenly dispersed inside the cups. That way they don't cook lopsided. But now that I have this done, I'm going to stick it in the oven and bake it for 20 to 25 minutes. All right, so my timer just went off. So I'm going to check my cupcakes and see if they're ready to pull out. So of course, we're going to practice proper oven protocol, standing to the side, pulling this out. They look really good. So I'm going to put this up here. And now I'm going to show you guys how to check to see if your cupcakes are ready or if they need to be cooked for a few more minutes. So back here. Okay. Here we go. So I'm going to grab my cupcake tin here, and I'm going to use a toothpick. So I'm going to stick my toothpick in a muffin or a cupcake and pull it out, and it looks clean. That means it's done. I'm going to check some of these bigger ones too, though. Let's see if he looks clean. He looks good. Check this one over here. So they all look really good and clean. Now I can't take them out of the muffin tin, though, for at least 10 more minutes.